Okay, good morning, boys and girls. Today is October 30th, 2021, and welcome to the Photography Club meeting. Just want to welcome all our members and guests. Hopefully everybody in the room signed in. Please silence your cameras, which I will do now. And are there any guests today? We have a new member. Would you like to stand and introduce yourself?
Well, I'm kind of, I guess, a new returning member. I'm Pat One Day. I've been working here for about 6 years and 3 months.
Very good. Welcome. And my guest today is Bob Millars. He's here in the front row. He happens to be our guest speaker for December 11th, but he wanted to see if his machine was going to be compatible and so forth. So I invited him just to join today. He also has an interest in street photography, so he's here as my guest today. Okay. Reach up. Anyway, this is our crew. These are the people that keep the doors open for our club. Communications, we have our own website. We have our own Google group for communication. We have a presence on Flickr. We also have a presence on Facebook. The lockbox, we have a lockbox at Manor 2312. You can do that, use that to drop in your dues, to drop in your monthly challenge photos, and also to drop in your fall art show registration. To be honest with you, just to keep the 3D and the painting and drawing people from getting confused, I also put out the old traditional pink basket. So the pink basket's okay, lockbox is okay. They'll all get to the same place. And so far we're having a huge show this year. So far we have 4 entrants. So this is going to be a winner. I always get nervous and I can't help it, but Charlene always assures me, Bob, that they'll be there at the last minute. And this week sometime, Bob. Yeah. I know. But so many other things going on in the leisure world. It's a small detail, but you know, whatever you can do, I'd appreciate it. Those are in dates to watch out for. We got a board meeting November 10th. Hanging party is November 19th, followed by the art show on the 20th. There's no meeting. And Thanksgiving, no meeting. Board meeting on December 8th, and Christmas Day, December 25th. Diane, you got the door? Thank you. The hanging party, we talked about Thanksgiving. Oddly enough, November, there's only a couple of meetings, so it's kind of a strange month. But anyway, those are the dates to watch out for. Also, I got a confirmation from the Leisure World Foundation, just making sure that we're on board to exhibit at the January 26th meeting. What that'll be is Arizona landscapes, Arizona reptiles, Arizona anything, because the main speaker will be talking on that topic. He's an author and so forth, and he'll be talking on Arizona, some of our amazing places. Here's our meeting grid. Today we're at October 30th. Our guest speaker is going to be Terry Voss, who's already on board. I'll cover the weekly challenges in a different slide. Your weekly challenges are none today because of the guest speaker, and none on December 11th, also for the same reason, guest speaker. And then on November 6th, it's fences. The 13th is citrus. If you have trouble finding citrus in Arizona, there's something wrong. December 4th is neon. And then December 15th is baskets. So those are your challenges. The monthly challenge, as you recall, these are the photos you see on display behind you in the display case out in the main walkway. We're on our last bat, so anything you guys can do to help pitch in will be great. The monthly challenge for October is yards. This could be anything from the White House lawn to a prison break yard, or anything yard. yard. And then black and white is the monthly challenge for November. Up to 3, 1, 2, or 3, up to 3 8x10s with your name on the back, dropped into the lockbox. And I combined the due dates for both October and November, is extended to November 30th for both months. And of course, those photos are then donated to Banner, not Gateway. Gateway's where I was. Banner Baywood, there you go. Jan has a connection for us there. Kelly has a connection there that we're able to donate those, and they use them to cheer up patients and to cheer up the nurses' stations and so forth. So it's a good cause. And today's agenda, we did the welcome, we did the overview, and today's guest speaker is Terry Voss. I had Terry's bio up on the website, and I hope you all took advantage of it, but Terry spent his life as a student, chemist, and teacher. Second half he spent as a registered nurse, registered psychiatric nurse. He got interested in photography in high school. After 4 years, he gave it up. And about 8 years ago, he bought a DSLR and joined a blog called The Ugly Hedgehog. And that's the connection we have. Soon after, they started a group called Street Photography. He joined and has done only street photography ever since. Today, he's going to talk about some of the issues involved and unique to street photography, like is it safe? And then a brief look at equipment, and then we'll cover the where, how, and when of shooting. And by the end, you should have knowledge and confidence to go out and the interest to go out and shoot. It so happens that the theme contest this year will feature street. So I thought it was really appropriate to go into street photography at this time. So without further ado, I'm going to, let's see. I'm gonna make Terry a co-host. Okay, Terry, this is our group. And then if you want to share your screen, feel free to do so.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I did want to thank you for inviting me out here with you this morning to talk to something that I really like. A couple of things before we start, though. First is stuff I've read and what I've actually experienced on my own, which means you're going to get my personal opinion. There are other opinions out there. Some will contradict what I'm saying, but you'll hear one side of it anyhow. Another thing, I'm going to assume you don't know anything about street. Otherwise, I wouldn't know where to start, what level you're at. So if you've heard it before, you'll hear it again. And also, anytime, if you have a question, ask me, because I do like questions. So, okay, to start out, what is street? Well, there is no official definition. One that I kind of use as my official one, and that the Ugly Hedgehog group that Bob mentioned has sort of adopted as an unofficial one, is put out by National Geographic magazine. So I want to read that to you. Okay, street photography is a way of seeing, a way of experiencing life. At its essence, street photography is capturing life without interrupting it, witnessing and capturing a once-in-a-lifetime moment as it unfolds in front of you. A pursuit that intrinsically means photography without permission. Candid photography, in other words. Okay, more informally, when people ask me, what do? I say I shoot people doing what people do, which means everything. Now, from what I've said so far, this implies two necessary things. One of them, the presence of at least one person, and the presence of some kind of environment for them to interact in. Okay, there are some people that say you don't need really either one of those. But I say that if you have no people in it, you just have like an urban landscape or an architectural photo. if you zoom in on your subject, so you got something about this wide and this high, you have a street portrait. But in neither case do you have what I think of as a street photograph. Okay, a second thing is that even by the National Geographic definition, the photo has to be candid. I don't know, maybe you've had the experience where you're going to take someone's photo. As soon as they see that camera, they stop their action. You know, they straighten out, they smile because they want to look nice. And that's not what we want. So it has to be candid. And there is an exception to that. And that is if you're at a place like, say, a farmer's market, where people have individual booths and you're walking along, you see some guy looks interesting, you know, it's maybe polishing apples or something. It's okay to go up and tell him, hey, you look neat. Do you mind if I photograph you? If he agrees, you have his permission. Step back, wait 2, 3, 4 minutes until he's forgotten about you and goes back to polishing his apples or whatever. Then anything you take is a candid photo and you have his permission. But that's the only thing I've been able to come up with that where you can ask ahead of time. Okay, another thing is that it has to take place with you on public property. The public property is what we mean by street, not literally a street, but some public place. So for instance, if you're out on the beach, you know, you're photographing people there, you are actually doing street photography because beaches are public property. If you're in a park, you're photographing a kid, it's the same thing. You're on public property, so you are doing street photography. Also, you know, trains, buses, these are public places as well. And one way to think of street photography is to think of the term street smarts. When we say someone has street smarts, we don't mean that they walk down Main Street and their IQ goes up 10 points. We mean that they have a way of looking at things, a way of being aware of what's around them and what people are doing. And it's the same thing if you're going to be a street photographer. You have to have that same kind of awareness. You have to know what the people around you are doing. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything. And one other thing, it's maybe my requirement more than others. I think that your final product should be, you know, an art photo, something really decent. And so you need to pay some attention to the principles of composition. And we'll look more at that later. So, okay. Now there's some issues or questions that tend to be unique to street photography. One of them is it legal? I mean, can you really take your camera, stick it in someone's face and not break a law? And the answer is yes, you can. If you are on public property, you may photograph anyone that you can see legally. So you're walking down the street, you see a police arresting someone. Can you photograph him? Sure. He's on public property, but more important, you are on public property. Children in a park, it's the same thing. If the park's public property, you are legally allowed to take photos of children. And one thing, children are not my favorite subject, but I do take them now and then when they seem interesting. In all of that time, I have never asked permission and I have never received any kind of negative comment from a parent. The only negative comments I've ever heard are from, you know, from other people out there. So don't worry about that. Now, another question though is, if you're on public property, can you legally photograph somebody who's not on public property? Like you can see into their backyard quite clearly. Can you photograph them? And the answer is yes, you can. If you're on public property, whatever you can see is legal. Okay, there are gray areas on this. For instance, you go into a Costco, you see 100 people around you. You go into a big covered mall, there's 1,000 of them. Can you legally photograph them? Well, the thing is, that's not public property anymore. And whether you can photograph them or not depends upon what the manager of that property says. Like for instance, at my grocery store, right at the door, there's a sign saying no photography. Other places, it depends. Now, I'll tell you one experience I had in a public mall. I was in there. I thought I was very discreetly photographing people with my cell phone. I look around over my shoulder, an official looking person riding one of those two-wheel things. I ended up in the manager's office. She said, if they ever catch me photographing in there, they're going to exile me. I will not be able to return. So I don't do it anymore. Okay, are there any places where you cannot photograph people? Totally illegal. And yes, of course. One of these is in what they call a place where the person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. Here you cannot. For instance, public restrooms, obviously you can't go in there and shoot people. And there are, places where you can't. For instance, military bases or the secure parts of airports, some government buildings like government hospitals, voting places during an election, and so on. Okay, and what I'm saying applies, by the way, only to the United States, maybe to Canada, maybe England, but every country has its own laws regarding privacy. And if you're traveling, you should check them ahead of time. Like for instance, in South Korea, I've read that if you photograph a female there without her permission, you can be arrested. In North Korea, of course, I wouldn't even go. All right, another question that arises is that of a model release. Do you need to have one in order to take people's pictures? And the answer there basically is no, you do not, because legally you can take anyone's picture if you're in a public place. The only time you need a model release is if the person who buys your photo is going to use it for commercial purposes, which means basically for advertising. Okay, if a person uses another person's likeness for advertising, that person who uses it can be sued, and nobody wants that. So the owner of the business needs a model release, and he's going to get it where? He's going to get it from you. That means you need to get it at the time you shoot the model. But other than that, you do not need a model release. And I'm sure most of you are not doing commercial work. And this does not mean you can't make money out of your work. If you all have an art show, you post a photograph, some guy comes along, he says, hey, that would look good on my wall in my den. Can you sell it to him without the release? Well, sure, because it's not commercial. It's an artistic use, and that's perfectly legal. Same thing, even having a show. You can exhibit other people's photos because it's artistic. Put it on the internet, it's a personal use. And those are all legal. Okay, another issue that comes up that is maybe unique to street photography is that street has a moral dimension. Shooting mountains and butterflies does not. I mean, again, you're going to put your camera right up in someone's face. Is it moral? Any problems? Well, believe it or not, some adults don't like to have their picture taken. You get up, you're lined up, you look at this guy, and you see a scowl, maybe he's even raising his fist. He's sending you a message, don't take his photo. Same thing with a woman, she hides her face, she looks away from you. She's sending you that same message. So leave them alone, ignore them, they're other people. Children, I've already mentioned that, it's perfectly legal to photograph them, But if you see a parent there looking a little angry, it might pay you to ask for permission first. Okay, another general area is down and out people. Is it moral to photograph them? You're walking along, you look over there, there's a guy sleeping on a piece of cardboard. Everything he owns is at his feet. Is it moral to shoot him? I think personally that most beginning street photographers will. I know when I started out, I did. But then I posted a few on his blog, and the moderator, he kind of gave me some negative feedback. So he and I went at it with personal mail, discussing the issue. And I came around to his point of view. Yeah, that might be me someday, and I sure wouldn't want my photo taken. So all I can say is it's a personal decision, but personally, I don't do it. I don't know. It's up to you. Okay, one more type where this enters in is with handicapped people. Is it okay to photograph a handicapped person? Well, my opinion is yes, it is. The reason is they are just like we are, except they have a problem. That's no reason to set them aside. We can't photograph you. There's something wrong with you. I say it's okay. I mean, that guy over there in the wheelchair, he might have lost his legs in Vietnam. The woman with the walker, she might have been T-boned by a drunk driver. And the kid with a deformity, hey, he was born with it. He can't help it. So I say they're just like the rest of us. Any questions on that? Okay. Last issue is it safe? Again, you're sticking your camera into someone's face. Will they like it? Well, I've been a street photographer for 6 years, 7 years now. And in that time, there have only been 2 instances where I thought things were, getting a little shaky. One of them was in Hollywood. I took a picture of a guy, he's talking to this girl. He saw me, come storming over, delete that photo. Sure, I will. Yeah, he's younger than me, in better shape. I'm not going to argue. Second one was similar. Some girl in St. Louis. Walking along, she saw this. Comes over, delete that photo. Oh, well, this took me by surprise. Like, I'm not sure what you mean here. May I see your photo? Your camera? Sure, I don't mind. She couldn't find her picture because I didn't take it. I didn't think she was worth it. She was kind of embarrassed and stalked off. But really, in all this time, that was it, 2 shots, where I had a problem. Now, occasionally, you're going to be out in the field, you'll take some pictures, get on your computer. Excuse me. I thought we had disconnected the phone. Anyhow, you're going to see maybe a frowning face looking at you. The person is obviously unhappy that you took it, but not making any fuss about it. Okay, it's there, you got it. That's the way it is. But for every one of those that you see, you're going to find 3 photos like that where someone is smiling at you. You didn't see that one either. So it makes up for it. Now, sometimes you're going to have people approach you and they're going to ask, take my photo. I always do. And I usually get a pretty decent photo out of it. In fact, there was one time in Dallas, there was this woman 30, 40 feet away from me. She saw me, raise the camera and all that. Did you just take my picture? Well, yes, ma'am. Well, take another one. You're the 3rd person today to take it. She wasn't that good looking, but the 3rd person one day. Got to be unusual. Okay, and don't overlook the obvious in all of this. There's some places you wouldn't go at high noon with a police escort. Don't go there at 7 in the evening by yourself with a camera hanging down because it's just unwise. So, all right, anything so far? Okay, now we're going to swing over more toward the actual shooting. First, a question that arises is, what's the best camera for street? And my answer to that is whichever one you own. I want to show you the ones that I use. This is my main camera. Okay, it's not an inconspicuous thing, especially when I unwind the zoom on it, 18 to 200 millimeters. Okay, I take 90% of my photos with this thing. This is a Ricoh GR2. It's a very small camera. Shoot it with one hand, concealable. Some people say this was designed by street photographers. I think there's an edition of this out there called the Street Photographer. I take 10% of my photos with it. Okay, and the difference is in the lens. If you read stuff on how to do street photography, usually what they're going to tell you is, get yourself a prime lens, 35 to 50 millimeters, because a prime lens is supposed to give you a more intimate feeling. But what I say is get yourself a zoom lens. And the reason, a lot of your photo ops are going to be like across the street or half a block down that way. And well, you're too far away. If you've got one of these prime lenses, what they tell you to do is walk. That's why you have legs. But I say a photo op in street doesn't last that long. It lasts seconds. And by the time you walk across there to take it, it's going to be gone. Whereas I can get there in half a second with the zoom. So that's a big reason why I've got the thing. And I do recommend it. And one interesting thing though, if you take my zoom and divide like into 10 millimeter increments, 18 to 28 millimeters, 28 to 38 and so on, the interval that gets used the most is the bottom one, the 18 to 28. And of that, it's mostly the 18 because I shoot from the hip a lot and I need the extra room. Okay, on the camera settings, usually they recommend setting your camera at f8 as your priority setting. That's fine for the depth of field, which is good. And others say set it at 150th of a second, which is also good. Some say set it for both, which is better. I say what you've got in your hand is a small computer designed specifically to take photographs. Set the thing on full auto and let it take its photos, which is what I do. And my part of all this is to find the subject. The camera takes the picture and we get along that way. Another thing I recommend is that shutter setting where you can set it to keep your finger down and it keeps on clicking. Use that and take 2 to 4 shots every time you shoot. The reason being that you get choices when you're doing your final work. And there's always one of those 3 that's going to be better than the others. And in connection with that, a lot of times you can anticipate a photo coming. For instance, you're looking down the street, you see a guy walking like this. You see another guy walking like this. Well, you're going to get a high five. So as soon as it's close, you start that thing and keep shooting until after they've connected. That way you get that moment that you're after. Okay, where to shoot anywhere there are people, beaches in summer, tourist areas in season, festivals, and so on. Bus stops and train stations are also good places. You get a lot of people hanging out there. Okay, and sorry, I'm blanking out, folks. But looking at shooting techniques. I want to show you a couple of photos here. Okay, this is not a street photographer. You do nothing that this man is doing. Okay, this is a street photographer. You do everything that this man is doing.
We can't see it.
Okay, I want to go over what he's doing. You can't see it, but he's walking very slowly. He's walking so slowly that he can, see, if he sees a photo op, he can pause in mid-step, take his photo, and continue walking. And I've done this a number of.
Terry, excuse me, we can only see the thumbnail. Is there any way to open it up?
I got a full screen over here. Let me go back and try it again.
What we were seeing was the file manager. It showed the two thumbnails in file manager. It didn't actually. Okay, here's what we need to do. Go ahead and open the picture the way you want to present it, and then do your share screen at the bottom of your.
Okay, that's going to take a moment.
No, that's all right.
You don't see anything now but the thumbnail?
Oh, there you go. That's it.
Oh,
Boy.
okay.
Good job.
I think that was on my fault. I don't think I pushed the share screen thing.
Bingo.
Yeah. All right. Anyhow, to get back to him, you do sometimes stop in mid-step. I mean, it's real. Another thing he's doing, is he's dressing to blend in with the people he expects to be with. You can see that they're all in t-shirts and shorts here, which is what he's wearing. He's looking from side to side. You can't see this either, but he is looking back and forth for photo ops. And he's doing it very seriously if you look at that expression on his face. Okay, dropping down, you see he's holding the camera at chest height. That's a position that we refer to as shooting from the hip. He doesn't have to raise the camera up. He's going to shoot from where it's at. One way you can tell is he's got the lens pointed straight ahead. Okay, he's got his left arm on the camera, the thumb on the focus knob. In my case, it would be on the zoom knob. Look at the other hand, supporting the camera, but he's got his finger on the shutter release. Okay, when he sees a photo op, it will take him an instant, and he's got the photo. He doesn't have to do a thing but move his finger. If it's off to the side, a quick turn and the same thing, and he's got the photo. And that's where you have to be, because a lot of times a photo op lasts literally a second or less, as I'll show you a few later on. Is there anything else to say about this? No, I think I've pretty much covered this aspect of it. Another thing you can do, obviously, is get the telephoto and shoot your subject from a long way away, which is really the reason I bought the telephoto in the first place. But there are a couple of other ways of shooting without sticking your camera in people's faces. One of them is what I call lying in wait, where you choose a background and you wait for someone to walk into it. For instance, with murals are nice to take photos of, but if you take the mural, you're taking a shot of someone else's artwork. What you want to do is have someone in there to make it your artwork. Okay, here, I wanted somebody in there, so I had to walk across the street, and I just stood there and wait until these people came along. Similar situation here, but a sculpture. But you know how it is in the street when people see you waiting to shoot something, they stop and wait till you're finished, or they walk around so they don't interfere. With this people, I had to literally say, no, go up there and stand there. I have to shoot with you. And they did. Another case in another type of situation, this was at a small town in the middle of a weekday, and there was nobody about. I had to wait 15 or 20 minutes before he finally walked by. Same thing here. I wanted a picture of this. but I needed a person, and it took 5 or 10 minutes anyhow before he came along. Okay, last thing I want to look at here is the actual shooting. You're out in the street, you know how to shoot and all that stuff, where to go. But what are you actually looking for? What makes a good street photograph? Okay, before we look at that though, I want to talk about composition with shooting. Both are necessary, of course, but they're two different aspects. Now, so when you look at read articles on street photography, they will tell you, compose your photo in the field. But really, you're in the field to get raw material, and you do your composing on the computer. So try to get space around your photo. Also, well, let's skip that part. I want to say that we can divide subject matter roughly into two areas, actions and emotions. I tried to separate them into distinct areas, but they do overlap. So we're going to look at some action photos here. Just obviously, it's whatever you see that does something. This isn't the same kind of action, but at least there's something there. Okay, here's a case where you can anticipate the action. You get ready, and as soon as it's almost there, you know, go onto that rapid fire thing and get your photo. It's just walking along the street, people doing what they do. Okay, bent body parts, which is action basically. And one thing, when you're in the street and you see two guys that are discussing something, it pays to stick around, because sooner or later, you're going to get some good shots from them. It's just something that happens. Okay, some things on composition. In street photography, it's been found in general by people who study this kind of thing, that the brain finds one subject or three subjects or five subjects, an odd number, to be more pleasing than an even number of subjects. So look to have an odd number of subjects in your photo. Here we've got 3. Also, triangles are nice in street photography. If you're not sure if you've got one, look at their heads. If they make a triangle, that's a good sign. Okay, here we have a 3-person photograph. We have the 2 answers, obviously, and the guy in the middle. The people back here don't really count. You could take them away and you still have a decent photo. He counts, well, because he's in the middle, you can't help but see him. And also, he makes the 3rd person. Okay, people pointing. This is actually fairly common once you get out and start looking at what people are doing. Here's 3 people again, plenty of emotion. More pointing, but it's a different kind of pointing. And we have a 3-person photo, 2 and 1. All of the crowd in the back, they don't count. A 1-person photo. The thing on this one is just that I've used the rule of thirds. It's very common, it's used everywhere. It's really good in street, it really helps. Okay, 2 guys discussing something. We have the bent body parts. Okay, in this case, we have 2 people. When you have the street musicians, usually they last for a while. So you have time to move around and take your photo. In this case, I was back with these when I started. I moved around to this position. And by then she graciously came up and gave him some money and I got a shot. Okay, this is a 1+3 people shot. We have them 3 main ones, and he's not even necessary to have a decent photo. But he helps because he acts as an audience, representing the people around him. Oops, he's a. Okay, I tried to emphasize emotions here, but it's hard. What is this? Let me stop this and start again because I'm not really sure what's happening here with those red lines. Okay. Okay, this is just emotions, 2 people emoting. Okay, here, this was taken at an Antifa type demonstration. He's angry because he forgot to put his mask on. And looking at the composition, it's what we call a symmetrical composition. It's not mirror-like as normal symmetry, but it's balanced, more like a teeter-totter where you're trying to get the sides equal and not have one outweigh the other. Okay, here's an example of you get it or you don't get it. It lasted a second. I'm walking along, as you saw in the early photo, heard them laughing, looked over, quickly snapped the shot, took a second shot, and by the second shot, it was all gone. One shot was it. Okay, just some emotion. Okay, here, 3 people, and they're making a nice triangle, and they're happy. I think most people would be tempted to crop it here and use that as the photo. But the thing is with street, you have the chance to use people to frame your photo, which is what is happening here. By having these body parts, and here, they are used to frame the main subject. And that's one thing I found that whenever I have a chance to use people as a frame, it definitely improves the photo. Here, a little bit of guilt, a little surprise. In case you're wondering about what she's surprised about, this is a gay pride festival and she won a prize. Okay, 3 people, she's happy. Why is she happy? Because she's in the pleasure zone. Now, one thing about street, and I'm going to emphasize this later, whenever you can put a sign in your photograph, it works well. Always look for a signage. Okay, here the basic composition is triangular, going along like so. What he's angry about, I have no idea, but I like the emotion. Straight triangular composition. 2 happy people. The only thing about this is I had to use the telephoto here because there's a big water feature between me and them. Just 3 happy people out on the street. Okay, this photo here. Okay, when I look at this, I see a leer. Okay, and when I follow his eyes, that just reinforces it. Now, remember I mentioned earlier about street photography has a moral dimension, and this is a case where it comes into play. If that were me, I'd be totally embarrassed if that were on the internet and I saw it. Okay, so this I have not posted. You all are the first people to see it, and you're probably going to be the last people to see it. Yeah, I'm showing it to you, for demonstration, but that's the only reason it's been shown to anyone so far. Yeah, and a couple of happy people, a couple of puzzled people, a couple of worried people, and a recruiter. See, when you're on and those unhappy people, I said that you would encounter every now and then. An anxious person. She saw this weird guy out there with a camera just photographing everyone. But the police know better, and they're getting you down. Okay, what happened here?
You might have shut off your share screen by mistake.
It's,
There you go.
oh, okay, yeah, maybe I hit the wrong button there. Okay, from here on in, I'm going to be a little more specific in the subject matter to try to expand upon it. Here we're going to look at juxtaposition, humor, signage, and humanizing. Juxtapositioning just being putting two like things side by side to make a comparison. Humor, okay, signage, the use of signs within your photograph, and humanizing, just a term that I use to describe using an inanimate object as if it were a human being. Okay, here, if you didn't have the sign, if you cropped it there, you'd have a shot of two, well, people who are a little more than friends. But with the sign there, it adds a touch of humor to it. Here, you could take the sign away and you still have a good shot of two people arguing. But with the sign, you know exactly what they're arguing about. Okay, here she was out there doing a little architectural photography. I thought I'd get her, but before I had a chance, he pointed me out, and I'm glad he did, because that's a better shot than I would have gotten without him. Okay, here in East Texas, when they have a major festival, they legally sell alcohol in the street, and it's legal to drink it in the street, and so people do. I saw the bear there and I thought, well, he had about 7 too many. So I wanted a shot of him. And when I saw the 3 people avoiding him, they don't know this guy, that was my shot. Another case of humanizing and juxtapositioning. You know, he's now personal. Okay, a bit of humor, but the point is body parts being used as frames. Or a frame. Okay, and you've heard about those macho Mexican men who are the boss of their household sometimes. Okay, a couple of 3 years back, there was a real concern in East Texas about festivals and violence. Someone was going to bring a bomb in or a gun in and really blow the place up. So they started fencing them in, and they started having a police presence, and they started searching people. At this particular one, you see 3 SWAT team members here, but they were everywhere. And I liked where these 3 chose to spend their time. Again, it's the sign makes a difference. Okay, this one. At a festival, I saw her sign. And I was totally focused on getting that shot. I got home. Where did this guy come from? I did not see him during this whole shooting process. And that's what sometimes happens. You get so narrow in your focus that you miss a lot. Okay, juxtapositioning for humor. Juxtapositioning just because I like the comparison.
Oh, gosh.
Bit of humor.
Okay.
Oops. Okay, we're going to really get narrow here and look at reflections. Okay, these shots are part of a much larger collection of reflections that I have. But anyhow, when you're out in the street, don't spend all of your time looking in the street for shots or down the sidewalk. Look in the windows because they reflect and you can get interesting shots that way. When I take shots like that, I always leave something here, some kind of frame to orient the viewer that yes, you are seeing a reflection. Okay, another one, but quite dissimilar. And I waited for this until the people were just right coming along, and also framed it using the signs. Okay, that you encounter mirrors when you're out walking. Use them too. I took 5 or 6 shots to get the right one, but you always just keep taking them. It's not right. Take it anyhow because you may not get another one. If another shot comes along, still take that too. Keep working till the good one comes. Okay, I just wanted to show you that indeed the photographer does take pictures as was shown in that sample shot there. Okay, puddle shot, everyone takes a puddle shot, but you can do it in street. You know, leave a little realism there to orient the person. Reflecting pools. Mirror shot again, and that's not me in the mirror. Interesting people. Okay, I wanted to show you more shots, but I couldn't think of a category, so I just made this one. Okay, the thing about this is we got 3 people, but the outer ones tend to be focused inward. And I also like it because it happened that we have a Caucasian, a Black, and a Hispanic, basically oblivious of each other. Okay, here, 2 people having lunch. I think the typical person taking this would crop it, you know, down the wall here and across the bottom and up the wall, using the bricks as a frame. But in street, again, look for a chance to use people for their frame. It adds more interest. Okay, when you're at a festival, typically what you do is walk down the main street, the main part of it, and look in the booths, look for something interesting. Always go behind the booths as well. That way you get a shot of the people who are purchasing. Okay, just walking down the street. Sometimes there are no good places where people congregate and you have to go out and look for them. Just walk and walk and walk. So you can see there's practically nobody out here. Pardon? Question? Okay. Here's a shot of, you know, you're in public property, they're on private property, but you can see them, so you can photograph them. Okay, now you see it, now you don't. It's another one of those. I'm walking along, I glance over and I see them, quickly spin and take it. But already it's dissolving. By the second shot, it was gone. But you can see if you look closely, his hand, he's already starting to lift it off. And I was lucky to just get the shot in. There are a lot of times you see the shot, but by the time the signal gets to your brain that it's there, it's gone. And it's very frustrating. Okay, triangular composition here, going like so. A bit of whimsy. Okay, 3 people forming a nice triangle. And the signage to tell you why these 3 old people are sitting out in the hot sun doing nothing. Just 3 people encountered on a walk in the street. 3 people again forming a bit of a triangle, framing with bodies. Now in this case, I did leave space here. It just suited me for this photo. just walking down the street. 3 people, a bit of humanizing here, and a sign to explain why these 2 people are sitting out there with adult beverages. Yeah, I told you for every sad face or unhappy one, you're going to get some smiles you didn't know about. And there's a couple of them. Okay, I look at this as 3 groups of 2 people. This one, and this one, forming a triangle. Okay, this one. There are a number of things about this photo. I posted it and a couple of people right away said, why did I crop it here and get rid of those feet? Well, the moderator, after a day or 2, made some comments, which he seldom does, said he was out having lunch with a couple of his artsy friends, and he showed them this photo and said, what do you think about this, the feet, as an art photo, not judging the value of the photo, but simply as a piece of art? Should they be there or not? And the 3 of them agreed the feet are necessary because the feet represent society at large. They bring us in. Remember with Hillary, it takes a village. Also, one of these has to be the mother of that kid. She had to see me photograph the kid, not a word. And of course, I didn't ask for permission. I don't ask. Third thing, this was taken at a park in Houston, downtown Houston. I was walking along in the park. Again, I see this person behind me. You can't take photos here. Well, why not? It's a park. It's a private park. Oh, come on. Anyhow, I ended up talking to the manager. It was a private park. And I happened to mention that I had been by the kiddie pool. Never tell anybody that you're by the kiddie pool because I said the parents never say anything, but other people do. And she said, if they ever catch me by the kiddie pool again, I can't come back. I don't come back there anyhow. Okay. She makes the photo. Without her, there's not much there. Okay, sometimes you have to get down to get your shot. And again, we have a kid, and I'll bet that's Daddy right there. He had to see me. He didn't say a word, and I didn't ask. No problem. Take a photo. I took it. That's what I got. If they ask you, take it because you get something out of it. Okay, here, triangular composition. Here we have a dog acting as the third person. Social commentary. Okay, social commentary is whatever people are talking about or whatever news you see on the internet and so on. It's a sort of relative photography. This was at that Antifa demonstration I mentioned earlier. You can see it was in Texas. You know, there were more officers of the law than there were demonstrators. I mean, there was even a National Guard accompaniment there. But anyhow, that's the relevance. Okay, this is at the Mexican border. My take is that this is a Mexican heading home after a day's work in Laredo. Okay, on the moral side of things, I took this actually with the telephone caddy corner across the 4-lane road, but I did walk around later and said hi to them. Okay, is there any problem with this from a moral standpoint? I did post this and I entitled it A Mother's Love. No question? Okay. Here, this was taken a few days before the last election up in Dallas, which is a liberal city. Well, most of the places were boarded up just in case the wrong guy won. But what I liked about this was the signage. contrasted with the rest of the decor. It's the good times. Okay, are our kids learning how to interact? This is a little before the COVID thing, but the same idea, but they were worried about cell phones and they don't interact. Just a shot taken at one of those festivals where they were concerned about who was there. Everybody got searched. And even the bars, if you wanted to get into a bar, you got searched. Outside of a gay pride thing, we have a symmetrical composition with signage. And here, again, it's, oh, you can't really see part of it, but it's a seniors exercise place. And that explains what he's doing. Okay, what are we doing with the inner cities? Not much here, but again, the sign kind of makes a difference. Alcoholism, with COVID, we have an increase in alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and suicides. And this is one of those tapes I took when I'm walking down the street, see it quickly around, take it, come back, keep walking. Okay, the big picture. Sometimes you don't feel like photographing people. So you can photograph the emphasis with the emphasis on the environment instead of on the person. But try to have somebody in the foreground just to give depth to it all. Just street shot, basically showing the street. And again, emphasizing the street. And again. Normally, I don't take photos at parades because it looks too much like a souvenir photo. You know, look, mom, you know, I was at the show. But in this case, I like the bikes all massed together. It's a street shot. Getting ready for a bike rally. I like the architecture. And again, no foreground here, but just the massing of people. Symmetrical composition. The bikes are the photo, but framed in people. Okay, the last thing is themes and collections. You can go out and kind of assign yourself a subject and just take pictures of that subject. And they don't have to be big collections, a few photos. In this case, in downtown Houston, they have a street where once a year, they have artists out there doing chalk drawings. I was photographing them, but along the street, they had this wall. So I would photograph people that were sitting on the wall or using the wall. And I just put those together as a group and exhibit it that way. Okay, here, I was driving by a flea market and decided to stop in and saw a lot of pickup trucks there. So I just decided to photograph them with their people. Got two guys discussing something again, and got a frame on this one with the corn stalks. Again, two guys in discussion. One, it's a lot calmer with just one person. Okay, anyhow, that's what I have. Do you have any questions on street or anything? Well, in that case, I thank you again for inviting me over, and I'll turn the meeting back to Bob.
Terry, I'm going to try. Hello. Terry, I'm going to try using the microphone, see if anybody here in the audience has any questions. Do you have any questions? Good. Anybody here have any questions? Yes, hold on.
Just wanted to ask, most of your photos are black and white. Is that on purpose or do you do color?
Yes, it's on purpose in a sense. When I started street photography, I worked in color. And, as discussions went on, it became obvious that, black and white was more the thing. And so I started going into monochrome. And then finally I gave in, I went to black and white and discovered I really liked it. And so I've done most of my work in black and white just because now I do have a preference for it. Occasionally I will post both of them. I'll do it in color and then I'll turn it into black and white. So those who like one can see it and those who like the other can see that.
It's more dramatic, I agree.
Yeah, some photos do look better in color, they do. But in general, see, the big difference is in a color photo, you see color first thing when you look at it. That's what hits you. But in black and white, the first thing you see is the form, the shape of things, the composition, which is really the object of the photo.
I found that sometimes the color can be almost be the subject. But sometimes the color distracts from the subject. So the black and white is more or less what I see when I see most street photography. But sometimes the color helps and sometimes the color doesn't help.
Well, color is a lot harder to work with.
Any other questions? Oh, hold on.
Hey Terry, when you are out, have you ever set your camera hyperfocal, set the shutter speed, and then just turn it into a point and shoot?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay, when you're out, have you ever set your camera? But I know you mentioned focus and put it on auto and things like that. But have you ever set your camera where the lens is set to hyperfocal focus and then you just set your shutter speed to whatever that f-stop is to give you a good depth of field and turn the camera into a point and shoot?
No, when I photograph, I set the camera strictly automatic. Even the focus is on automatic.
Okay.
Because it takes so much concentration just to find the subject and get it, and click. You don't, in my opinion, anyhow, you don't have time to check your diaphragm. Should I shoot at f8 or the sun's out? Maybe I better go to 11 or something like that. I find there's just not time for it. Hence the full auto settings.
Does anyone at home have any questions? How would I see the chat feature here? Trying to find the chat feature. Bear with me here. Here we go.
There you go. There.
Okay, does anybody at home have a question? Go ahead and type it in chat. I can read it to Terry. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come in from home. Last chance for questions. Terry, I can't thank you enough for attending today. Thank you for your great
You have a
presentation.
question?
Oh, Diane says thank you to everyone. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Terry, thank you very much for attending.
I think someone has a question. I can't hear anything, but he's gesturing. Oh, Bob, and it must be Bob Perkins.
Actually, Linda had a question
Oh, I couldn't see you. Go ahead. Yeah.
raising her hand, so.
Oh, I didn't see the raised hand because I only see part of the people. I don't see the whole. That's why chat is better. But yeah, go ahead. Linda, go ahead.
I can't do it fast enough in chat.
Okay.
Do you have a website that you sell your photos, or this is just for your own pleasure?
I do have a website. I don't sell the photos. Heck, if anyone wanted one, you could have it free. But it's photoblog.com/boss. I put a
Thank you.
few up there, you know, I slowly transition photos there. Oh, and also, if you're interested, and Bob can tell you more about this, but the street photography section of Ugly Hedgehog is where I post almost everything. Bob's a member of that, so.
Yeah, Terry posts almost a daily photo. And I know the street photography is one of the first things I usually tune into. He posts one photo about every day very consistently. What else? Anyone else out there? Just take yourself off mute and speak, I guess, because I can't see you raising your hand, or type in the chat.
I typed in the chat.
Since we can hear you, go ahead and ask.
Well, it wasn't asking, just to let Terry know it was an excellent, complete
Oh, there it is. I see
presentation.
it. Yeah.
I do appreciate that, and I thank you for the thought.
We did learn a lot from it, from the very first definition and wideness of street photography. We learned a lot.
Well, I sure hope so.
Okay. All
I
right.
just want to ditto that. Thank you so much, Terry. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Yes, Terry, we agree too. It was very beautiful. Your photos are lovely. I love the contrast, the dark and the light in one photo.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right. Anything else? I think we'll do a wrap other than that. Everybody okay? All right. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.